The man, once a notorious ace hitman, is now like a dog without a home, his right arm severed. Your brothers in arms, who've been through life and death with you, are even more determined to join forces and take him down. Faced with desperation, Suhan made a last-ditch effort. Unexpectedly, the senior's great sword had the power to shatter mountains and rivers. It's just the sword aura produced by pulling the sword from the stone. He shattered their blades into fragments, but that was merely fending off a bunch of small fry. Because the great Azura had already approached him with a sword in hand, Suhan swung his blade, barely blocking this lethal strike. But he was violently blasted away by the other person's fierce strength. The furious great Azura, gritting his teeth, exclaimed, "Numbers, you dare to harm me! This month, I will make you beg for life, but not grant you death." As soon as he finished speaking, a command was given with a resounding call. Dozens of people in black swarmed in from all directions. Suhan wanted to swing his sword in retaliation. But I found myself physically overdrawn, a wave of dizziness washing over me. And this only drove the great Azura into further hysteria. A loser will always be a loser, even if one clings to the mighty Songhai Lu, it's to no avail. Those who betray the Saluo Hall have only one fate, death. Who would have thought, at this moment, Songhai Lu would slowly emerge from behind? Is that so? Those were your words. Before the great Azura could even make out the attacking motion, the assassins behind him were all cut in half at the waist with a single stroke. Watching as the figure slowly walks towards you, desperate Suhan finally showed a hint of joy. And just moments ago, the fierce and menacing figure was brought to their knees, begging for mercy right on the spot. Upon seeing this, Songhai Lu spoke coldly, with a face full of disdain. "Go back and ask your master if the name Songhai Lu can save this kid." In the Grand Azura's archaic language. "Fortunate to have preserved my own life, I humbly acknowledge and shall assuredly convey the senior's message to my lord." Yen Dabian got up, ready to make a quick getaway. However, his steps were suddenly halted by the call of the vast sea, and at this moment, the great Azura, fearing the emergence of the elder, hesitated. Displayed a message straight as a 90-degree angle stick. "Senior, is there anything else you'd like me to do?" Sung Lao took Xianer from Shihuan's hands. "My cat was hurt by you, but your sorry life might not be enough to make amends. But the grievance of that guy's severed arm has got to be settled here one way or another." At this, Deshio Luo was completely dumbfounded. "Senior, his arm, isn't it?" Below. But before I could finish, the sound of gunfire cut me off. When I left, his arms were still moving. "Are you suggesting that I'm going senile, that I've become confused in my old age?" Upon hearing this, Deshio Luo was utterly speechless. It seems that if this broadcast isn't tragic, it's going to cost a life. So, without the slightest hesitation, the man grabbed a knife, and with one swift motion, he chopped off his left arm. Upon seeing the aging, he nodded in satisfaction. He immediately dropped to his knees in gratitude for the mercy of sparing his life. This battle has finally come to a close. And with a whisper to ward off the cold, the word, "thanks," had just left my lips. But I found that age suddenly clamps down hard. With a gasp of aged breath, blood gushed forth, and his entire body went rigid before he collapsed to the ground. It wasn't until the next day that, relying on his strong inner energy, he finally came to. Suhan inquired about the things that had happened during his absence these past few days. "I heard you got into a scrap with Lufu Kiln. So, who came out on top in the end?" But then, suddenly, his brows furrowed with age. "That old guy doesn't play fair. I used one sword, and he brought two. 2 against 1, that's not what a true man does." In a more colloquial and Americanized tone, the translation could be, "Feeling cold, breaking out in a cold sweat, huh? No? Keep on grilling." Instead, she asked him, "Where to next? It's time for me to walk the path ahead on my own." Suhan's eyes narrowed sharply, a bit fierce. "Senior, what do you mean by this?" "Last night, I sent that guy packing. Later on, do you think Bodhi will save face for me?" At this moment, the life of Xianer, the cat-like sparrow, seemed to be expressing its discontent. Suhan went along with him, picking up the conversation. "Cha, I'm leaving. No one can handle Suhan's charm." But unexpectedly, Sung Lao just tossed the black cat right into his arms. "Well, you take him with you then." Suhan was completely baffled by this whole series of maneuvers. But Sung Lao didn't offer much of an explanation. Instead, she tossed a booklet at him. "This Shinyu breathing technique can alleviate the backlash brought on by the Azura energy. Consider it like you're helping me by treating the mole in my study group." Afterwards, he took back the heavy sword that had been carried on his back for the journey. "There's no feast that doesn't come to an end. Take good care of yourself." Seeing this, Suhan stepped forward, wanting to find out the reason. But then, he found himself with the point of a sword pressed against his forehead. At that moment, Shuer also jumped off his back, tugging at the old man's long beard with the corners of his mouth. Yet, what greeted him was just a worn-out corner. "Don't let me see you again or else you're dead." And just like that, aged and fading, he slowly vanished into the dense forest. Meanwhile, Suhan began to meditate and cultivate on the side of the road. At this moment, he sensed that his state of mind was beginning to waver. Before long, within just a few months, we should be able to break through the Arhat realm's Great Wall. Improving one's cultivation should be a cause for celebration, but at this moment, both he and Sinu were hanging their heads in dejection. Pondering, what kind of person is Songhai Lu, after all? Judging by the situation and demeanor, he clearly doesn't resemble the villain they make him out to be. But why have you been cursed by the entire continent's underworld? And for what reason do these enemies despise you? At this thought, Suhan suddenly furrowed his brows. Beware of enemies, the senior is in danger. So, he immediately got up and chased after the direction of the aged, vanishing figure. Suddenly, all those unusual actions made sense. The senior had been seriously injured and had many enemies. He didn't want to drag us into his troubles, which is why he deliberately put on this act. Before long, Su-han caught a whiff of the pungent scent of blood. So, he set Schwer down on the ground. With a few quick moves and nimble steps, he advanced forward. Seeing the elderly man cornered in front of the tree roots by a man dressed in an official uniform. Spill it, where exactly is that sword hidden? With a weary sigh, the old swordsman nudged the blade lying before him and said, "This sword is all I possess. If it pleases you, my lord, take it as you wish." Unexpectedly, the man lifted his leg and delivered a kick, sneering. "You old fool, I give you an inch and you take a mile. By imperial decree, I am here to claim the sword. If you persist in this stubborn defiance, do not blame me for abandoning the traditional virtues of respecting the elderly and caring for the young." But Sun Lao directly retorted, "Your Majesty, if it were truly a royal decree, why would you travel in black armor? I suspect you're acting on the orders of the Long Night Bureau's assistant Xian. Seize the traitor. Expose him." The man, still maintaining his dignified facade, commanded, "Take him and lock him up. You will escort him to Liangzhou to be dealt with by his majesty." With age evident yet carrying himself with neither civility nor arrogance, he cautioned, "Be careful, my lord. In this territory of Liangzhou, there are more than a few who would wish for my demise." Without a word, the man threw a solid punch right then and there. "You grumpy old man, even on your deathbed, you still have such a sharp tongue." And after a few had left, Su-han stepped forward and sheathed the great sword. For the following days, he kept secretly trailing the prison wagon. But at the same time, at least 3 or 4 groups of people came along too. But they just wouldn't make a move. And now, I'm about to enter Liangzhou city. Su-han knew well that if he didn't make a move now, the opportunity would become incredibly slim. Who would have thought, at this moment, out of nowhere, reinforcements from the heavens descended. A group of masked individuals suddenly rushed towards the armored vehicle, launching an attack. After the black cloth was lifted, and it was confirmed to be Songhai Lu. The groups lurking in the shadows also slipped in and joined the fray. And that leading official, it was merely a chance encounter. He was jointly repelled dozens of meters by the opponent. A man who values his life doesn't hesitate for a second. Survival is paramount, so he quickly makes his escape. Seeing this, Su-han couldn't help but curse under his breath. What a waste. They should just keep fighting, wear each other down, and both end up losers. That'd be perfect. In the fluid battlefield, the situation changes in the blink of an eye. The people in black in the audience actually started to bid. So Su-han embarked on a battle of wits and strength at the mountain pass. Before long, the 3 brothers wiped out everyone present. The bearded leader couldn't help but burst out laughing. "The infamous Songhai Lu of the martial world is now ours." And just then, Su-han took an arrow and burst forth from the sky.